Hi, everyone. Welcome to Food Talk with Dani Nierenberg. Today, I am very honored to chat with Cary Fowler, who is the president of the Food Security Leadership Council, the former U.S. Special Envoy for Global Food Security at the U.S. State Department, and the architect of the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. He is also the recipient of the 2024 World Food Prize. And I also have Anna Nelson, who is the executive director of the Food Security Leadership Council and the former deputy special envoy for the Office of Global Food Security at the State Department, along with Cary. And she was in that role until earlier this year. So thanks to you both for joining me. I'm so pleased to see you and have you here.
Thanks, Danny.
So, I guess my first question is why start the Food Security Leadership Council? Why is that important to do right now?
Well, there's certainly an urgency now, as you well know. We have more than 700 million people on Earth who are food insecure, meaning that they lack access to enough food to meet basic human needs. But if you look out into the future, by mid-century, the situation seems like it will probably be even worse than it is today. There are a number of headwinds that we face in terms of just basic agricultural production. The biggest one, of course, is climate, uh, rising heat, extreme weather, fluctuations, and such. But there are a host of other challenges as well that we don't usually factor into the projections. And I think part of that's the methodological difficulty that academics
Mhm.
face in doing that, and part of it's psychological, perhaps. But
Mhm.
if you look at the basic components of producing food, of soil, of water, and in terms of food security, of trade, of conflict, of energy prices, and everything, all of those are trending in a negative way in terms of
Sure.
producing more food. And yet, the population is rising, and we need to produce a dramatically larger amount of food by mid-century just to meet food demand, much less food need. So all of those things combine to create urgency. But then, of course, there's the current context in this country and abroad. There was the elimination of USAID and our agricultural development programs, and it seems that we in the United States will be scaling back from humanitarian assistance, but also perhaps even more so from agricultural development work. So we wanted to start the Food Security Leadership Council to highlight the importance of doing this type of work. Um, we feel that it's an expression of our American values, and it's also in our American interest to
Mhm.
work towards a more food secure world. Uh, and a food secure world is, of course, a more peaceful world, and that's in
Right.
everyone's interest.
Absolutely. Anna, why did you want to be a part of this?
So many reasons. But beyond the urgency that Carrie described, I really wanted to make sure that we could keep together the coalition and the partnership, and the huge numbers of people across all different sectors who care about this issue and believe that we have to think in a longer term, more visionary way, and that the United States has to be a part of the solution. So I'm really hopeful that we could make that happen through the council.
Absolutely. And the cascading crises that Carrie mentioned, there's so much going on. And with the dismantling of USAID, I imagine for you both, this is both a professional loss for sure, but also a personal one because you both worked so, spent so much of your lives in public service. Can you just talk about sort of that personal effect for a moment and what's going on in Washington and how that's affecting you both? Carrie, maybe you go first.
Well, Danny, I'm at my age, I'm probably closer to the end of a real active involvement in a professional career than Anna is. I know that. But it was a wonderful experience working most recently at the State Department with truly committed colleagues and being allowed to engage in some programs, some initiatives that I thought were moving the needle in
Sure.
the direction towards food security. I don't want this country to lose the expertise and the commitment and the passion that I've seen in so many different areas, not just inside government, but in universities and around the world. And I don't want this government to lose the partnerships that we've developed with other countries. If you think about it, what we should be doing as a country to support global food security is not that dramatically different than what a Canada or the UK or France should be doing with their resources to do the same thing. So we have the natural inbuilt ability to have collaboration with our partners and
Right.
allies, and that's something that would pay a lot of dividends for us in the future.
Absolutely. Anna, do you want to comment?
Sure. I've spent most of my career in public service, and certainly leaving the State Department was an emotional decision. I care very deeply about its mission, but the wonderful thing about the United States is that we can advance public service in so many different ways, both inside and outside of government. So, I'm confident that public service will always be part of my life and so many others who are sort of seeking out new paths right now. And again, through the council, we hope to give folks like that platforms and bring people together to continue to affect change.
I love the optimism. That's what we need right now in this country. And so I appreciate that from you both. Can you talk about who is part of the Food Security Leadership Council and why you brought that particular group together, those particular folks?
Anna, you want to jump in, or you want me to handle that one?
I'm happy to. So we're really privileged to have a council of 25 members. They're leaders in agriculture and government, military, business. We have Nobel laureates and World Food Prize laureates. And
Right.
um, I'd really encourage folks to take a look at our website and read all of their bios because they're so inspirational. And those members are really here to help us shape our strategy, the big vision moving forward. And then we're also honored to have with us a growing set of distinguished fellows who are leaders in their respective fields who can help us with particular aspects of our work to really shape and develop our positions moving forward. And then I do want to make a plug since we have this platform today. We're about to start recruiting for associate fellows who are early
Okay.
career folks. And again, we want to build the food security policy community at all levels,
Right.
keep work together and keep people inspired and energized. So anyone who considers themselves interested in global food security in the early career space, please look out for that.
That's great. Carrie, anything to add on why those folks were chosen? Sorry.
Yeah, we wanted to attract and did a really broad range of people who are leading world experts in their own field. Not all of the council members, by the way, are agricultural experts. But with four Nobel laureates, I can say that they're certainly experts in research. And as Anna mentioned, we have a retired commander of the Central Command in the U.S. military. We have chief scientists from different agencies. We have private sector folks. We have other agricultural researchers and such. And we wanted that broad input and
Hmm.
broad, I'd say, wealth of experience that could guide us in our work in the future.
That diversity is so needed right now in those different perspectives. I think, Anna, you mentioned, the council members are there to help you carry forward this big vision that you have. Can you talk a little bit about what's happening in the short term with the council and what you hope to achieve overall?
Absolutely. Our central focus really is the development of a action plan for U.S. leadership, a blueprint for U.S. leadership in global food security. Our goal is to develop really actionable recommendations, emphasis and repetition on the word action. Want to be sort of more of a manual than a white paper, if you will,
Hmm.
for future policymakers. And we have a couple sort of principles underpinning that. One is we have to prioritize. We always say that, and we never do, right?
Sure, sure.
I don't think we put our best foot forward as a government in the last global food security strategy. We had something for everyone, which is the easy answer, but probably not the
Right.
most effective answer with,
Right.
scarce resources. We want to make sure we're thinking long term. The U.S. government has the habit of, I think, attacking large challenges in a series of short-term bites.
Or,
And we have to force ourselves out of that construct. And there's so many reasons for why we do that, but we have to try to rise above. And then, of course, a huge contention, no surprise for all your listeners who know Cary well, of course, is that we have to do so in partnership with others. We cannot retreat from the global stage. The United States has to be part of the solution, partnering with others on such an enormous challenge. So with those sort of guiding principles in mind, we want to do the hard work for policymakers where we can to do that prioritization. So the hard work, but also kind of the unsexy work of how do you operationalize? What are the mechanisms you have to figure out? The organizational mechanisms, maybe it's the contracting mechanisms, all these sort of wonky things that really can make or break government policy.
yeah, we need those wonky things. And I love you. I love that you said that this is more of a manual than a white paper. That's absolutely what is needed right now. Carrie, when the console was launched earlier this year, you said that we can't return to the status quo. And I think, Anna alluded to that. But what does that mean to you that we can't go back to what we were doing before?
Um, I, I think that there are a lot of people that would like to go back to what we were doing before and just
Mm-hmm.
reestablish all the institutions and the funding mechanisms and connections that were there and have been there for decades. Um, I'm I don't believe we can for a number of reasons.
Hmm.
One is politically. I don't think there's a political appetite for simply reestablishing what existed last year or 5 years ago or whatever. Um, and part of that is because of misconceptions, I think, about the work that the United States has done in the sphere of food security, in particular agricultural development. You're probably aware of the different surveys that are made periodically, and we ask Americans how big a percentage of the national budget do you think foreign aid is? And
Sure.
sometimes you get answers like, well, it's a quarter of the entire budget, or it's a third of the entire budget, when it's typically less than 1% of the entire budget. So there are misconceptions about that. But there's another reason I think that we can't, or at least shouldn't, go back to what we were
Mhm.
doing before, and that is that I think we can do better.
Sure.
I actually think we can do more with less. I don't think we need as large a budget as we've had in the past to accomplish even more. I'm not arguing for a streamed down, slimmed down budget, but I'm
Sure.
just saying we could do better. And I think we can do better by realizing that we've got to get the fundamentals right. We've got to reverse some of the trends that I mentioned earlier, the negative trends about crop adaptation, about soils, about water, about R&D. We can do that. And if we really do focus, as Anna mentioned, on the most essential and critical elements, then I think we've got an attractive package moving forward that we can sell across the aisle. But that's going to take some hard work, and it's as
Sure.
Anne mentioned, it's going to take working on a more of a manual than a blueprint. We can't expect, by the way, people on Capitol Hill who have to necessarily jump from one issue to the next to be experts in this particular area and to formulate the plan for us. So that's what we're trying to do, to give them something that's really concrete and actionable, implementable to do.
Right. That political appetite, I think you're right that it isn't there, but I think there are so many things that we have lost that, maybe need to be reestablished at some point. And one that comes to mind is the Feed the Future Innovation Labs. They were a huge casualty of the funding cuts under the Trump-Vance administration. Can you both talk about those labs and why they were so important? Because I think you're right. There's a lot of misconceptions by the American public about what USAID was doing, and I think this was something that was really valuable.
Mhm. Well, I think if you agree with the premise that the United States, because of its values and because of its interest, needs to be involved in the in work to strengthen global food security. Then the next thing you would consider is, well, where is our comparative advantage in that?
Hmm. Hmm.
And our comparative advantage historically, what's really made this country great nationally and abroad has been our commitment to research and to technology and our ability to produce. That's something that we walk away from with great peril. So the innovation labs are an important component of that. I think both domestically and internationally.
Right.
They were labs located in a number of different universities around the United States. They were focused on solving really practical and oftentimes cutting edge problems for developing country farmers. Um, However, what that did was it also gave us the ability to partner with institutions abroad. It was a two-way street. We
Right.
shouldn't be thinking that our investment with the innovation labs was just a big giveaway program to people in other countries. No, the benefits went both ways, and the benefits of that type of agricultural research pay off actually for American farmers. There's no such thing usually as innovation in agriculture that is confined by a national border. So our work to help farmers in Africa or Latin America pays dividends to farmers in the United States. And it keeps that pipeline of innovation going. And as Phil Pardee at the University of Minnesota has pointed out so eloquently, so strongly, an innovation pipeline in agriculture is a 50-year pipeline. The kind
Right.
of
Right.
benefits that you get from investing in research can often last for a half a century. So we need to keep ourselves well stocked with that.
Do you think that will actually happen?
Well, I would have to say that we have suffered from decades of bipartisan benign neglect or worse
Yeah.
with agricultural research.
Right.
And part of that is really because it's so misunderstood. It's one of the few things, Danny, where government can invest and get a big return on investment.
Yeah.
We know that our work through USAID, through the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research, the CGIR, that our investments in that system have paid uh, uh, have had a return on investment of 10 to 1, not just for farmers abroad, 10 to 1 for farmers here in the United States.
Right. Right.
And there are not too many things that government can do that can give you that kind of profit margin.
Absolutely. USAID was not good, I think, in many ways about telling its story. Some of the examples that you've given, Carrie. How do you see the work going forward with the consul? I wonder what you're thinking about communication and storytelling. And Anna, maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, Dani, we'll look for your advice for sure. But one of the things we want to do is educate about the many things that the U.S. government does related to global food security.
Right.
So maybe we'll touch on some of the major thematic areas we're focused on. But the theory there is there are in fact many different tools the United States government kind of brings to the fight, and that we might not think about. USAID has, of course, kind of been on the front page in the last couple of months, but there's so much more than
Right.
cultural development. So certainly thinking about communication and coalition building, and some of these sort of enabling sort of support things that we need to figure out in addition to the policy itself is something that will be a major focus of ours.
That's great. It's been worrisome to me to see that other countries like Germany and some others are reducing sort of their focus on international aid. And I wonder if you look at the consul as something that can be replicated in other countries, if this is the track we're on, where countries are pulling back instead of going forward on international humanitarian aid, agricultural development. Do you see this working in other places? And I imagine there's a lot of sort of cross collaboration you could do with other countries as well.
Well, the short answer to that is yes. And it's because, well, other countries are pulling back, Danny, as we know. some of those countries, European countries, are taking funds from development assistance pots and putting it in defense, for example. And we know why that is. Even though in the long term we need a peaceful world. A peaceful world is going to be a world with food security and
Right.
not otherwise. But I have been speaking with some of our friends and people I met, for example, in the G7 process when I was at the State Department. Um, Friends in development agencies in Europe who are having to reduce their assistance. And what they're telling me, interestingly, and I hadn't frankly thought about this when we set up the Food Security Leadership Council, was that well, they need to go through the same process we're going through. They need to find out, well, what are the most essential, highest impact activities they can engage in? And by the way, what they can do in that regard is probably not going to be any different than what we should be doing.
Sure.
So they have asked us if we, when we develop this actionable blueprint that Anna has referred to, if we could share it with them, and of course we can do that if that's helpful to them.
Right.
It seems to me like it also presents another opportunity if they are rethinking in fundamental ways their engagement in food security, as I think we will be doing. Then it presents the possibility that we could do it together from the very beginning
Sure.
and design programs that would be more likely to create the kind of critical mass and cross-sectoral linkages that you need to be most effective in addressing food security issues.
Again, I love the optimism. I love how this could spread. I wonder for both of your perspectives, Carrie, you said, if we can go forward and do more with less when we're talking about international development, are you seeing any interest from members of Congress? I think of folks like Lindsey Graham and others who used to be, pre this administration used to really look at foreign assistance as something that we should invest in. Are you seeing any of that from members of Congress?
We haven't yet made a big point of reaching out to members of Congress. We've really been in the establishment phase for the Food
Mhm.
Security Leadership Council. But a few have reached out to us and said that they're really happy that someone is thinking about this. And
Good.
and I think there's a great deal of anticipation and expectation that this will be useful. Um, I think that frankly, the dust has to settle. We're in a
Sure.
period of pretty extreme politics right now. But when the dust does settle, we're going to be there with a really clear agenda and strategy for moving forward in this issue.
Absolutely. Anna, I live in Baltimore, not far away from Washington, D.C. I wonder if you're hearing from former colleagues, that are they excited about this, and what you're up to?
Certainly, we've been really heartened by the outpouring of enthusiasm, I would say, of folks asking how they can get involved and how they can help. And we're going to need it. We're going to need all the help we can get, right? We want to harness all the bright ideas, all the ideas that maybe seemed too crazy before, but now it's time to put on the table. We have actually a huge opportunity to rethink and bring back up questions that have always been lingering about why don't we do it this way? So it's been great again to offer a bit of a platform to folks who need it and who want to think about these things alongside with us.
That's fantastic, and I'm sure you're getting a lot of great suggestions. I want to go back a little bit and talk about the impact that the dismantling of USAID is having on the ground. And I was recently, and like you both, I travel a lot. I was recently in Ethiopia talking to farmers and talking to research groups and NGOs. And what I'm hearing, and what I think I'll continue to hear as I travel, is that people are asking me, why did America do this? And, why would we do this without some sort of transition plan? And so as you think about the console going forward, you're really going to have to build a lot of trust, I imagine. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that process, because we're going to have to build that trust back in the United States again when we're talking about these things.
Mhm. I think Dani, honestly, that's not going to be an easy thing to do. When programs are cut or dismantled quickly without a lot of communication or collaboration on them, then trust does suffer. One of the things that I think we need to be committed to going forward, which is not going to be easy for us, but which will be necessary,
Or,
is to make commitments that are long-term in
Mhm.
nature. Now, what the mechanisms are for that, we will try to flesh out. Um, but we can't do the hard work of building food security without making long-term commitments. Food security can't be built with 1,000 different fragmented, unconnected programs that are short in duration. So I think our inclination is to say, let's focus on what we do best. Let's focus on what's most impactful.
Mhm. Mhm.
And let's crowdsource in with ourselves and others the type of funding and capacity and expertise that we need to really make a difference. Too often in the past, I think we've thought of our work in global food security as doing good deeds and
Right.
things that were nice to do. I would suggest that we ought to, in the future, um, see it as problem solving.
Right. Right.
Problems can we actually solve and have metrics that take us in the direction not just of making incremental changes, but actually of solving basic problems.
That's great. That's great. Um, and I'm wondering what you're most excited about as things move forward with the console.
I'd say two things. One is the opportunity to rethink. We certainly wouldn't have hoped for such a sudden opportunity to rethink. We would have liked that transition, maybe as you mentioned, but having a blank slate is a healthy thing. The world has changed a lot since a lot of these structures were developed. We have a better understanding of the long-term challenges than we did before, and we should account for that. We need a sort of a more fit for purpose approach. So the opportunity to do that really big thinking is very exciting. And then the other thing is building the community and almost creating an institution that is beyond a single institution. So not sort of building our own brick and mortar. That's not what I mean. But
Sure.
again, having a platform for people who care about these issues, who want to move US government policy and action in the same directions, giving everyone an outlet to do that together, and keeping folks energized is also energizing to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Danny,
And of course.
can I add to that? I thought Anna was going to say it was the opportunity for us to continue to work together. That's what I would have said, Anna. But but I think that we want to highlight also what other people are doing, and we want to
Mhm.
be a good partner with other organizations that are working in this area. We don't want to come in and steal funding or steal the
Sure.
limelight. What we want to do is bring people together, highlight the good work that other people are doing, and hopefully provide leadership, if I can be that bold, through ideas.
Uh-huh. I love this, amplifying, what others are doing, that collaboration that's necessary, building this platform and providing a sense of leadership when, frankly, we're not seeing a lot of that, at least by the federal government. I wonder how both of you think, our listeners, whether they're policymakers or in the philanthropic community or in civil society, can be useful as the console moves forward. You mentioned sort of crowdsourcing ideas. How can folks who are listening be helpful as this work continues?
Anna, that's one for you.
All right. Well, I'd say a couple different ways. First of all, anyone who's working on aligned issues, get in touch. We're very much at a formative stage. We want to hear everything. We'll be setting up opportunities to do that, but also we want to do, just chats with folks. So please just reach out. Our contact information is on our website. And then, of course, keeping these messages alive in any
Right.
way possible, I think is really important. Tying food security to the many other global and domestic issues that it's related to, just to keep it on the agenda at every level, I think is really important. We're at a time when there's so much distraction in every single way. If those of us who care about this particular issue set can, keep it on the table, I think that's really important.
Yeah, we really need to keep these issues on the table. Thank you both so much for doing that. Thank you for your public service for many, many years. Folks can find out more about the Food Security Leadership Council by going to foodsecurityleadership.org. Thank you both so much for joining me, and thank you for your work.
Thank you, Dani. Thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Dani.
Thank you.